Welcome back to Reddit Tales by Uncle Sammy. I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribed and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension, cue the truth, let's get into it. The cruelest thing my partner did was stand in our kitchen, look me straight in the eyes, and ask why I did not want her anymore, knowing she'd been giving herself to someone else while I kept building a life for us. Here's what happened. Cold air leaked through the window seams while I stared at a neat stack of photographs on our dining table. The same surface that held birthday cakes and tax folders. Sleet whispered against the glass, and the radiator clicked like it was counting time for me. My name is Malcolm Reddick, 41, owner of Reddick Performance Garage, and a former Army Special Operations medic who learned to stay steady when life turned sharp. In those images, my wife, Danielle Hart-Reddick, stepped into a boutique hotel beside a man younger than me, smiling like promises are disposable. I watched completely alone. That Tuesday in early December, Danielle finally asked a question that had been hovering between us like smoke. She stood in our kitchen wearing a tailored navy suit, edges sharp, lipstick precise, hair pressed into a smooth bob that never moved. Her fingers gripped the quartz counter as if the stone could hold her upright. "Why do you not want me any more, Malcolm?" she said, voice careful, each syllable measured. I kept chewing pasta I could not taste, listening to the fridge hum and the distant whoosh of cars outside. My fork felt heavy, like a tool used wrong. I looked up slowly, keeping my breathing even. If you have ever been blindsided by someone you trusted, keep watching, because what I discovered changed everything. And when you hear how I handled it, you'll understand why silence can be louder than revenge. I set my fork down beside my plate with a deliberate click that sounded louder than it should have. My eyes rose to hers, and I let my face do what it practiced in mirrors. Calm, unreadable, finished. The smile I gave her was not warm. It was recognition of an ending I had already accepted. Her breath hitched, and her gaze flicked away, then back, as if she expected anger to prove she still mattered. I had been prepared for 32 days, 11 hours, and a handful of stubborn minutes. Preparation is my habit when fear tries to steer. Danielle's expression changed in small steps, like a dimmer switch turning down. Her lips parted, her pupils widened. Color drained from her cheeks, leaving a clean, startling pallor against her makeup. In that moment, she understood what I understood. I knew. The room smelled of basil and dish soap, and the silence carried the faint thump of our neighbor's bass through the shared brick wall. I did not raise my voice. I did not ask for explanations. I watched her realize that proof was not optional anymore, and that my quiet was not confusion. 91 days earlier, on a rain-soaked Thursday, she had said she would be late again. She worked at Alder and Finch Creative, recently promoted to executive director, the kind of title that came with late meetings and hungry clients. Ambition had always been her engine. I supported it, shifting dinner, rescheduling weekend plans, swallowing my own impatience. That night, while she showered, her phone lit up on the bathroom counter. A preview flashed. Tomorrow, same room. I cannot stop thinking about last night. The words sank into me like cold water. The message vanished, but burned in my mind like a bright weld. I did not confront her. Training taught me that emotion is loud, but evidence is louder. So I observed. I listened. I cataloged small inconsistencies the way I once cataloged symptoms in combat. Timing, tone, omissions. Receipts appeared in her tote from restaurants she had never mentioned. A hotel charge landed on a card statement she assumed I never opened. Black lace lingered at the back of her drawer. Untouched when she dressed for me, worn when she claimed she was exhausted. My stomach tightened, then steadied into focus. Calls ended mid-sentence when I walked into a room. Her laughter turned into a quick throat clear when she noticed me. She began wearing perfume to feel professional, even on Saturdays. When I asked about her day, she answered with polished paragraphs that sounded like press releases. I started noticing her tells. A tap of her thumbnail against her ring, a blink held half a second too long, the way she used my full name when she wanted control. I kept my voice even and my face relaxed, but my thoughts ran laps I never said out loud. Denial tried to soften corners. I did not let it. His name was Colin Pierce, 33 to my 41, senior strategist at Northlake Media, a rival firm with glass offices downtown. They met at an industry summit in Atlanta, while I was negotiating financing for a second bay at my shop in Northeast Philly. I spent 16-hour days reviewing numbers, ordering lifts, and training a new crew, believing I was building the life she wanted. She was building something else in private. The irony sat heavy when she praised my focus while sending him hotel confirmations. I pictured her typing, smiling, and calling it harmless. My jaw tightened. I hired a private investigator, Darnell Kincaid, a retired detective with a quiet voice and a notebook that never left his hand. I did not need more truth, but I needed documentation that could not be argued away. We met at a diner off Roosevelt Boulevard where the coffee tasted like burnt patience, and the waitress called everyone sir with a tired smile. Darnell slid a sealed envelope across the table. "You sure you want all of it?" he asked. I nodded, my jaw tight, and paid without haggling. My flaw is that I trust paper more than promises. Back in my truck, the heater blasting and windshield wipers straining, I opened the envelope. Photos, timestamps, receipts, and notes in neat blocks of ink. Danielle and Colin enter a boutique hotel near Center City. Danielle laughing over cocktails at a rooftop bar I had never visited. Danielle's hand on his forearm, her head tilted like she was listening to music only he could hear. Every page felt like a blow that left no bruise, only pressure behind my eyes. I sat in the parking lot with my hands on the steering wheel until my knuckles went pale. Then I drove home carefully and said nothing. I kept our routine intact with the discipline of a man doing patrol in hostile territory. I kissed her goodbye in the morning and tasted toothpaste and betrayal together. I asked about her schedule while she scrolled through messages that made her mouth curve. At night, I lay beside her, facing the other way, listening to her breathing settle. She noticed my distance and tried to close it with questions that sounded concerned. "Are you all right?" she asked, fingertips brushing my wrist. "Just work," I answered, letting the truth carry the lie. She nodded and turned back to her phone, and I stared at the ceiling until sleep finally took me. My shop was busy, and the noise helped. Air compressors, ratchets, radio talk, the bell on the customer door. I could disappear into engines and measurements, into problems that were solved cleanly when you applied skill and patience. Danielle could not. She began studying my face at dinner, watching for cracks. Sometimes her gaze carried something like guilt. Then she would brighten and propose brunch with friends, the kind of couples who posted matching holiday photos and believed love was a contract that renews itself. I smiled, agreed, and planned my exit in my head, counting days the way some people count blessings. The hardest nights were when she reached for me in the dark, her hand sliding across my chest as if touch could erase months. I made excuses, sore back, early appointment, a stubborn headache. Each excuse felt like a small funeral for what we used to be. My pride refused to accept intimacy as a patch over deceit. Still, my body remembered her, and that memory was a cruel trigger. I started grinding my teeth in my sleep. In the mornings, my jaw ached, and I would chew ice from my water bottle without thinking, as if cold could numb the inside. On her birthday in October, I gave her diamond studs I had bought before suspicion settled in. She cried when she opened the box, and her tears landed on my knuckles. Years ago, I would call them joy. Now they read as regret. We ate at a candlelit restaurant near Rittenhouse Square, pretending to be the couple strangers envy. She said, "You feel far away lately." I watched the candle flame wobble in the draft and wondered whose hand she had held earlier that week. "I am here," I replied, voice smooth. "The shop has been intense." She exhaled, relieved by my silence. When I decided to confront her, I did not improvise. I assembled a fold the way I assembled a bid proposal. Clean, ordered, undeniable. I used a leather binder stamp with my shop logo, because professionalism is my language when emotions threaten to flood. I created a timeline and matched her lies to dates, places, and charges. I printed message excerpts without theatrics. My flaw has always been control. I soothed myself with structure. While she slept, I rehearsed what I would say, trimming every sentence until nothing sounded like pleading. I wanted my voice to be steady enough to hold the line. The night she came home late with a familiar excuse of a client crisis, I was waiting in our living room. One lamp lit the space, throwing long shadows across our rug. The folder sat on the coffee table, centered like a verdict. Danielle paused in the doorway, coat half off, brows tightening. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" she asked. The question carried unease and irritation, her usual blend when she felt the room slipping from her. I gestured to the chair she used on Sunday morning for coffee. "Sit," I said. "We need to talk." She moved like her heels were suddenly heavier. She sat with her ankles crossed and her hands smoothing her skirt, a repetitive motion that revealed anxiety despite her composed face. "You are scaring me," she said. I kept my voice low. "4 years ago, you made vows in front of our people. Do you remember them?" Her throat moved as she swallowed. "Yes," she said, too quick. "To love, honor, and protect, and forsake all others," I continued. I nudged the folder forward with one finger, as if sliding a contract. "Open it." Her nails scraped leather. The first page was our wedding photo, frozen happiness under summer sun. The next page ended that illusion. She flipped pages faster, panic building in her eyes like water rising behind a dam. Receipts, hotel confirmations, a printed map of routes that matched her late nights, a time-stamped photo of Colin's hand at her back as they entered an elevator. "Malcolm, I can explain," she whispered. I shook my head once. "No," I said. "Not cruel, not loud, just final. The facts are already speaking." Tears loosened her makeup. "It meant nothing," she said, voice trembling. "It was physical." I leaned forward, elbows on knees, and listened to how small her excuses sounded in our quiet room. "A mistake is forgetting milk," I replied. This was a pattern. She slid down to her knees on the rug, reaching for my hands, and I stepped back. Her touch felt contaminated, and that thought made me ashamed of myself, because I hated what suspicion had turned me into. "I love you," she said. I listened to the words and felt a dull ache where certainty used to live. "I believe you feel something," I answered. "But love does not require deception to survive." She begged for counseling, for another chance, for time. She offered to quit her job. I heard every promise and pictured her typing hotel addresses with steady fingers. Shame pressed against my ribs, then turned into clarity. "I do not want to repair this," I said. "I want out." I walked to the closet where my duffel bag waited, packed days earlier with clothes, toiletries, my father's watch, and a folder of documents. I had transferred half our joint savings into her account that morning, not as a gift, but as a clean line. The house was paid off. She could keep it or sell it. I did not want a war, only distance. "You are leaving?" she asked, voice small. "You left first," I said. My hand found the doorknob. She asked where I would go, as if the location could reopen what her choices had closed. I turned once, took in her kneeling on our rug, and answered, "Somewhere I can breathe." I spent the first night in a suite overlooking the Delaware River, a choice that felt practical and symbolic. If I was going to lose my marriage, I refused to lose my dignity on a friend's couch. The room smelled like clean linen and money. I lay awake listening to elevators and muffled hallway laughter. The pain pulsed, deep and steady, but relief sat beside it like an unexpected companion. No more guessing. No more scanning her phone screen. No more acting like a man who did not know his own life. Near dawn, I finally slept for 2 hours and woke with salt on my cheeks, surprised it took that long to arrive. In the morning, I called my business partner, Terrence Vaughn, who had helped me turn a 2-bay garage into a respected performance shop. Terrence answered on the second ring, engine noise in the background. "You good?" he asked. He always asked it that way, short and direct. "I need a few weeks," I said, watching gray water move on the bridge. "Can you run both shifts?" He did not press, which is why I trust him. "I can," he said. "But tell me this is not the kind of trouble that ends you." I swallowed. "It will not end me," I said. It is ending something else. Terrence exhaled slowly, like he understood the difference. Next, I called my attorney, Miriam Lowell, the same lawyer who handled my lease negotiations and vendor contracts. Miriam spoke like she was counting dollars, even when she was counting feelings. We met in her office near City Hall, with buses sighing outside and winter light slanting through the blinds. She reviewed Darnell's packet and nodded slowly. Pennsylvania is no fault, but judges are human, she said. Documentation matters in negotiations. I surprised her by saying I wanted fair terms and a quick finish, not destruction. Miriam leaned back and studied me. Most people want revenge, she said. I looked at my hands and remembered what battlefield anger costs. I want peace, I replied. Peace is expensive too. Danielle called 42 times that day. I counted because my mind clings to numbers when emotions feel unmanageable. Her voicemail shifted from sobs to anger, then back to pleading. She demanded explanations she already had. She accused me of abandoning her, as if my leaving created a betrayal. Text followed, each message more frantic. Please come home. Tell me where you are. I am worried. The last line made my mouth tighten. Worry felt like a costume she put on when consequences arrived. I did not answer. I sat at the window, watched the bus idle at a light, and listened to the hum of the city as if it could teach me how to move forward without looking back. 2 days later, she appeared at my shop during lunch rush, hair pulled into a low ponytail that made her look younger and strangely vulnerable. She carried a bouquet of purple irises, my favorite, because my mother used to grow them behind our old house in Milwaukee. Terrence intercepted her at the counter, and through my office window, I watched her lips move quickly, hands pleading. Terrence stayed firm, shoulders squared. He is not seeing anyone today, he said. Danielle's eyes lifted to my office window as if she sensed me, and my stomach twisted with a mix of anger and grief. I looked away first. When she left, the bell over the door rang, and the sound felt final. Friends began calling, believing they were peacemakers. Caleb Whitman, my old college roommate, used the same persuasive tone he used in negotiations at his corporate job. She said it was once. He insisted. I pictured the timeline. Once does not last 3 months. I replied. My sister, Patrice, called from Richmond and asked if I was sure. Patrice's flaw is optimism. She tries to patch cracks with hope. I asked what she did when her fiancé betrayed her years ago. Patrice fell silent, then admitted she left because staying made her feel small. Then you understand, I said softly. Patrice sighed, and I could hear her swallowing tears she did not want to hand me. I understand, she whispered. I just hate it. The most surprising call came from Danielle's mother, Gloria Hart. Gloria spoke with gentle firmness that reminded me of church ushers who can quiet a whole sanctuary with one look. I am not calling to change your mind, she said. Danielle told me everything. I paced my hotel room, phone warm against my ear. You sound disappointed, I said. Gloria sighed. Disappointed is a small word, she answered. I raised her to honor commitments. We talked about vows, about pride, about how love can turn into shame when you realize you believed a story that was not true. Gloria did not ask me to forgive. She asked me to protect my own future. When we hung up, I stood still for a long minute, letting her honesty settle like a weight that somehow made me lighter. After 2 weeks, I made a decision that shocked even me. I put my newly expanded bay and some equipment up for sale, not because business was failing, but because my memories were attached to every wall. Terrence met me at a corner coffee shop in Fishtown, where students typed on laptops and the espresso machine screamed. This is your dream, he said, palms open in disbelief. I stirred sugar into coffee I did not need, a habit I pick up when my thoughts race. Dreams change when the foundation cracks, I said. Terrence watched me closely, then nodded once. Where are you going? He asked. West, I replied. The word tasted like new air, somewhere I am not haunted by familiar blocks. Terrence exhaled, and I saw pride and worry at the same time. My new destination was Salt Lake City, where my old friend Deshaun Briggs had been begging me to join his custom motorcycle shop For years. Deshaun and I met in the Army, bonded over long nights, bad coffee, and quiet jokes that never reached our eyes. He built Highline Cycle Works into a respected place for restorations and performance builds. The idea of working with bikes again felt like return to a part of myself I had neglected while managing payroll and expansion. I wanted a fresh routine, new streets, new grocery aisles, new faces who did not know my old marriage. I told Miriam to finalize the sale, and I told Terrence I wanted him to buy my share with payments over 5 years. Terrence protested, then accepted, because he knows generosity is sometimes my way of closing doors without slamming them. The sale paperwork moved fast. An investor wanted my equipment, and Terrence wanted the equity. We signed contracts under fluorescent lights while trucks rumbled outside. I bought a modest 3-bedroom in a suburb outside Salt Lake City, close enough for commute, far enough for quiet nights. The house had a garage that smelled like sawdust and possibility, and a small yard where winter grass lay flat under frost. Danielle learned about my move through social circles, because news travels faster than honesty. She showed up at my hotel door the night before I left, knocking until the hallway carpet muffled nothing. When I opened the door, her eyes were swollen and determined. "You are moving," she said, stepping inside as if she still belonged. My chest tightened, and I reminded myself that boundaries are built in moments like this. I closed the door and kept my voice level. "I am not required to share plans with you now," I said. Her eyes flashed, indignation fighting panic. "We were married," she snapped. "You can just erase me?" The sentence stabbed, because part of me wanted to answer, "No, I cannot." Instead, I said, "You made choices. I am making mine." She tried anger when tears failed, accusing me of acting perfect. I did not let the bait catch. "I made mistakes," I said. "I did not trade our vows for a hotel key." Her shoulders sank, and she slid down the wall, hugging her knees. "I still love you," she whispered. I watched the words hang in the air and felt something complicated. Grief, pity, and a quiet refusal. "You love the safety," I said. "If you loved me, you would not have been able to lie so easily." Before she left, Danielle placed a small velvet box on the desk by the window. "I found this," she said, voice thin. I did not open it then, because I already knew. My grandmother's sapphire ring, the one I kept wrapped in tissue in my tool drawer, saving it for an anniversary I now had no use for. After Danielle left, I opened the box. The blue stone caught the lamplight and threw it back like a cold spark. I shut the lid and slipped the ring into my duffel bag. At dawn, I rode a shuttle to the airport, stared at clouds from the plane window, and practiced the kind of calm breathing I used to teach scared soldiers. I told myself the past would not follow if I did not carry it. In my pocket, my father's watch ticked steady like permission. Salt Lake City greeted me with a clean, dry cold that smelled different from Philly's wet winter. Mountains stood in the distance like steady witnesses. Deshaun met me outside Highline Cycle Works, grinning wide, beard neatly lined, hands already stained with oil. "You really came," he said, pulling me into a brief hug that felt like brotherhood without words. The shop was bright and organized, bikes lined up like patients waiting for skilled hands. I felt my shoulders loosen for the first time in months. Deshaun walked me through the floor, talking about bills and customers, and I listened to his confident rhythm like it could steady mine. My quirk is that I straighten tools without noticing. I started lining up wrenches at a workbench, and Deshaun laughed. "Still the same," he said. "That is good." For once, sameness did not feel like a trap. It felt like a base. I bought a membership at a small boxing gym near a transit stop because I needed a place to bleed stress safely. The gym smelled like leather and disinfectant, and the heavy bags thumped like metronomes. I also started running in the mornings along a trail by the Jordan River, watching ice melt into narrow streams as winter loosened its grip. My flaw is that I punish myself when I cannot fix what broke. Running gave that urge direction. 5 miles became 7. 7 became 10 on Saturdays. The cold air burned my lungs, and the burn felt honest. I listened to my footsteps and refused to imagine Danielle's voice. Some mornings, shame tried to rise anyway, whispering that I missed signs, that I worked too much, that I should have noticed earlier. I answered that shame with movement, not arguments. When I returned home, sweaty and steady, I wrote 3 lines in a notebook and kept my thoughts from spilling everywhere. Night still tested me. An empty house makes every sound louder. The heater clicking, a neighbor's dog barking, wind tapping a gutter. Danielle's betrayal triggered shame I did not expect, not because I believed I deserved it, but because part of me wondered what I missed. Had I been so focused on building stability that I starved the connection? I hated that question because it sounded like blame. I also could not dismiss it. I wrote in a notebook before bed, 3 sentences only, to keep my mind from spinning. What happened, what I felt, what I would do tomorrow. My speech pattern has always been measured, careful, and that can look cold. Alone, I admitted the truth without performance. I missed a version of us that laughed at corner store snacks and argued over movies. I did not miss the lie. I fell asleep to the soft buzz of streetlights and the knowledge that my home was mine. 6 weeks after the move, the divorce papers arrived by certified mail. Danielle signed while contesting the terms, accepting the split Miriam proposed. A short note from her attorney said Danielle waived alimony and asked only that I find peace. The clean finality should have felt like triumph. Instead, it felt like stepping out of a burning building and realizing you left photos inside. That night, I sat on my garage floor among paint cans and unopened boxes and let myself cry until my throat hurt. I cried for the family we never started, for the Sunday mornings we ruined, for the trust that now felt expensive. When the crying stopped, I stood, washed my face, and cleaned my tools. Cleaning is my coping habit. I make order when my heart feels disordered. Then I slept, and the next morning I ran anyway. 3 months into my new life, Caleb flew in for a conference and stopped by the shop. Seeing him in a suit among motorcycles made me smile. We ate lunch at a family-owned diner near a bus depot, listening to announcements echo through the doors. Caleb hesitated before sharing news. Danielle is not doing well, he said. She lost her job. I blinked, surprised. Danielle had always been sharp, competitive, relentless. Caleb explained she missed meetings and broke down during a presentation. He said Colin ended things when the consequences showed up and that he had someone else in another city. I listened, expecting satisfaction to arrive, and it did not. What I felt was quieter, a confirmation that betrayal has a bill and it always comes due. I sipped water, watching a bus pull away, and I realized I did not want her destroyed. I wanted my life back. After lunch, Caleb handed me an envelope, heavy paper, my name written in Danielle's careful script. She asked me to deliver it, he said. No response needed. I stared at the envelope all evening, turning it over while the house creaked with settling wood. Her handwriting pulled up memories of notes on the fridge and lists on the counter. Near midnight, I opened it. The letter did not beg. It owned what she did. She wrote about selfishness, insecurity, and the way attention can feel like medicine when you do not realize you are sick. She wrote that I was not the problem, that she was. The honesty hit harder than excuses ever did. I folded the pages neatly, because my hands needed something to do, and I sat with the ache in my chest without rushing to numb it. By the time I stood, my knees were stiff, and the house felt too quiet. I burned the letter in a metal can behind my garage, not out of spite, but because I did not want to curate relics. The paper curled and blackened, the ink turning into smoke that vanished in the cold air. Watching it disappear felt like choosing a boundary. Then I washed my hands, though ash barely clung, and I went inside to sleep. Over the next months, work expanded. Deshaun and I launched a small line of custom parts, and riders drove in from Idaho and Nevada. I joined a running group that met near a church parking lot on Saturdays, where people greeted each other with warm nods and steady conversation. I learned the route past a corner store that sold fresh fruit and cheap gloves. I listened to gospel drifting from open doors on Sundays, and it reminded me that communities heal people without asking questions first. In small, ordinary ways, my life grew roots. Nearly a year after I left Philadelphia, a call came from Terrence. His voice sounded tense. Danielle is in Salt Lake City, he said. My hands were greasy, elbow deep in a carburetor, and for a second my heartbeat stumbled. Where? I asked. She came to the shop back home and asked about you, Terrence replied. Then she contacted Deshawn's front desk. She is outside. I stare at the engine parts, mind moving through options. I could refuse and keep my peace intact. Curiosity and a sense of unfinished business pulled the other way. I cleaned my hands, slowly, like I was buying time for my thoughts to line up. Tell her I will speak for 10 minutes, I said. When I hung up, I noticed my jaw was clenched, and I forced it to relax. My body still remembers old stress. I did not let that stress make the choice for me. Danielle stepped into the shop entrance hesitantly, scanning the floor as if she expected someone to shout her name. She looked different. Thinner, shoulders slightly rounded, clothes simple. Her hair was natural now, a soft curl pattern she used to hide under straight styles for professional polish. Seeing it made my chest tighten with an old tenderness I did not want. Deshawn caught my eye and nodded once, giving space. I approached, rag in hand. Danielle, I said. She startled, then offered a small smile that did not reach her eyes. Malcolm, she answered, voice softer than I remembered. She looked past me at motorcycles and tool benches, then back at my face like she was searching for proof that I survived her. I stood still and let the silence do its work. Why are you here? I asked. The question landed without anger, because anger would have been a tie between us. I did not want ties. She sat in the visitor chair with her hands folded, too still, as if movement would reveal weakness. You built something good, she said, glancing through the window at the bikes. I leaned against my desk. You did not fly across the country to compliment my work. I replied. She exhaled. I am moving to Minneapolis next month, she said. New position. New start. The words came out as if she practiced them, maybe in a mirror. I did not want to leave without seeing you one last time. I watched her eyes, looking for manipulation, and found mostly fatigue. Why? I asked. She looked down at her bare ring finger. Then back up. Closure, she said. And because guilt does not loosen when you keep hiding from the person you hurt. Her honesty made my throat tighten. I did not say that out loud. I nodded once, giving her room to finish. She reached into her purse and placed a small package on my desk, wrapped in tissue. I opened it and found my grandmother's sapphire ring, the same one she returned once, now polished, the stone catching light. I kept thinking about it, she said. How you saved it for a future, and how I broke that future before it arrived. Her voice trembled, and she steadied it with a breath. I am not asking for another chance, she continued. I know what I did. I know what it cost. I came to thank you for not trying to ruin me when you could have. I turned the ring in my palm, feeling its cool weight. My thoughts ran in two directions at once. The part of me that wanted to harden, and the part that remembered loving her. I hated that conflict. I let it exist without acting on it. You did not earn revenge from me, I said. You earned distance. Danielle nodded as if she understood. Danielle nodded as if that truth made sense. I needed to see that you are okay, she said. Not because I deserve it, but because I could not stop imagining you broken. The sentence exposed her emotional trigger, guilt that refused to loosen. I felt a brief pull to comfort her, and I hated that pull because it threatened my boundary. Instead, I said, I am okay. She blinked fast, fighting tears, and stood. That is all I needed, she said. She reached for the doorknob, then paused. I am sorry, she added, plain and direct, without drama. I believed she meant it, and believing that did not change what happened. She opened the door and stepped out into the shop noise. I watched her walk away through the front entrance, shoulders tense, then disappear into daylight. When the door closed, my chest felt both lighter and sore, like a bruise you stop pressing on. I sat down, finally, and noticed my hands were shaking a little. I put them flat on the desk until they steadied. After she walked out, Deshawn leaned into the doorway. Are you all right? He asked. He never pried, but he always checked. I held up the ring without looking at it. Old chapter, I said. My voice sounded steady, but my ribs felt tight. Deshaun nodded. "We can close early and grab food," he offered. I realized I had not eaten since dawn. "There's a place by the bus stop that does gumbo on Fridays," I said, surprising myself with the specificity. Deshaun grinned. "Lead the way." We locked up and walked into cold evening air, the streetlights buzzing softly. In the restaurant, the smell of spices and fried bread filled the room. People laughed at nearby tables. A television played local news with captions scrolling. I ate slowly, tasting food again, and let the ordinary noise remind me that life continues even after a private earthquake. When Deshaun told a story about a customer who tried to pay with coupons from the wrong decade, I laughed without forcing it. The laugh felt like evidence that I was not stuck in that office chair anymore. That night, I sat on my back steps, watching stars sharpen over the dark outline of the mountains. The air smelled like snow and distant wood smoke. Danielle's visit stirred emotions I thought were buried. Not longing, but understanding, and a quiet kind of forgiveness that felt more like relief than generosity. Carrying anger has become a habit, like clenching muscles you forget to relax. I noticed it loosening. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Lila Garner, a veterinarian I met at a neighborhood cookout weeks earlier. We had been on 2 dates, both gentle, both honest. Her message was simple. "Still on for Saturday?" I read it twice, feeling how different her directness was from Danielle's polished evasions. I typed back, "Yes, I am looking forward to it." Then I set my phone down and listened to the wind move through bare branches, grateful for the quiet that did not feel lonely. Saturday arrived with bright sunlight and cold that made sidewalks glitter. I met Lila at a small bookstore cafe near a light rail stop, the kind of place that smells like paper and cinnamon. She wore a wool coat and carried a canvas tote with paw prints stitched on the side. Lila's speech had a warm precision, as if she weighed words before sharing them, and I liked that. We talked about her clinic, my shop, and the strange ways people reveal themselves under stress. She asked about my military years without fascination or pity, just curiosity. I told her a few stories, careful with details, and watched her face stay steady. That steadiness mattered. My emotional trigger has always been feeling judged. Danielle used judgment like a lever. Lila did not. When I paused, she did not fill the space. She waited. That patience felt like respect. We walked out into crisp air, and the bell of the cafe door rang behind us like a clean beginning. After coffee, we walked through a neighborhood of modest houses and tidy porches, passing a barber shop where clippers buzzed and a radio played soft gospel. Lila waved at the barber, who called her Doc, with friendly respect. She pointed out a corner store that sold the best tamarind soda and joked that she could measure a city by its late-night snacks. Her humor was gentle, not sharp, and that eased something in me. My flaw has been guarding myself so tightly that joy feels suspicious. With Lila, joy felt safe enough to touch. We sat on a bench near a bus stop and watched people move through their day. A parent adjusting a child's hat, a man carrying groceries, a teenager swinging a backpack. The small scene reminded me that love is not fireworks. It is consistent. I did not say that out loud. I simply reached for Lila's hand, and she let me, her fingers warm inside my glove. Later that week, I returned the sapphire ring to a small safe in my closet, not as a symbol of Danielle, but as a symbol of my family line and my own persistence. I stopped touching it like it was a wound. At work, Deshaun trusted me to handle a rare build for a retired firefighter who wanted his bike restored for a cross-country ride. The project demanded patience and creativity, the kind that pulls you out of your head. On lunch breaks, I ate at the same diner near the transit hub, learning the staff's names, leaving tips without thinking. I began recognizing faces from my running group in grocery aisles. The city started feeling less like a hiding place and more like a home I chose. One afternoon, a customer thanked me for being honest about repair costs. His words landed deeper than they should have, because honesty had become a bruise in my mind. I nodded, then realized I was smiling. Spring brought thawed soil, and the sound of sprinklers clicking on before dawn. The running group added longer routes, and I found myself chatting instead of counting miles. One morning, a man in the group asked why I moved west. I felt the old shame rise, the impulse to protect my image. My speech pattern has always been measured, careful, and that sometimes looks like secrecy. I chose a simple truth. My marriage ended, I said. The words hung in cold air, then dissolved. No one asked for gossip. Someone simply nodded and said, "That is hard." The lack of spectacle made my throat tighten. I realized how much energy I spent expecting people to mock my pain. That expectation was another scar from betrayal. As we ran, our shoes tapping pavement in rhythm, I let my breathing match the group and felt less alone without needing anyone to rescue me. By summer, Highline Cycle Works hosted a community ride for a local charity, and the shop buzzed with families, music, and the smell of grilled food. I watched kids climb onto stationary bikes for photos, parents laughing and wiping grease from cheeks. The scene triggered an old ache about the children Danielle, and I never had. For a moment, shame tried to turn the ache into bitterness. I noticed it, named it silently, and chose not to follow it. Deshaun caught my expression and nudged me with his shoulder. "You good," he murmured. I nodded. Lila arrived with a cooler and greeted people like she belonged, because she did. Later, when a little boy dropped a plate and started crying, Lila crouched, spoke softly, and steadied him without making him feel small. Watching her, I felt something warm settle in my chest. I did not call it hope, but it behaved like hope. One evening, after closing, I took a bus downtown instead of driving, just to sit among strangers and feel anonymous. The bus smelled like damp jackets and cheap cologne. A teenager played music softly through tinny headphones. An older man read a paperback with a cracked spine. I stared out the window at storefronts, neon signs, and people crossing streets with groceries. In Philadelphia, anonymity felt impossible because every corner carried a memory. Here, I could exist without a backstory. A woman with a church hat got on and nodded at everyone like she was blessing the ride. The small gesture made me think about Gloria's phone call, about disappointment and dignity. My internal voice, the one that used to repeat the betrayal like a warning, grew quieter. When the bus stopped near my neighborhood, I stepped off into warm air and realized I had gone a full day without checking my phone for an apology that would never change anything. That was progress. Months later, when my divorce anniversary approached, I expected a storm of feelings. Instead, the day passed with mild discomfort, like whether you dress for and keep. Moving through. At the shop, I replaced a fuel line, helped a customer troubleshoot a wiring issue, and joked with Deshaun about his obsession with perfectly aligned shelves. My quirk is that I line up tools by size without thinking, and Deshaun teases me for it. That afternoon, Miriam called to confirm there were no loose legal ends. After the call, I sat in my office and listened to the shop's sounds. Metal clinking, air hissing, a radio playing softly. I realized I no longer needed revenge to feel whole. I needed clarity, routine, and people who match words to actions. In the evening, I ate dinner with Lila at a small restaurant near a church parking lot and laughed at a story she told about a stubborn dog who refused to take medicine unless it was hidden in cheese. Ordinary life tasted good. The following winter, a storm dropped heavy snow and turned streets into slow-moving lines of headlights. I shoveled my driveway with steady strokes, breath making small clouds, arms burning in a satisfying way. A neighbor I barely knew walked over and offered salt. We talked about weather and sidewalks and local schools, the small conversations that build a sense of place. After he left, I realized I had not thought about Colin in months. That was a quiet victory. Danielle's choices belonged to her. My choices belonged to me. Inside, I made tea, listened to the kettle whistle, and watched snow collect on the fence. The stillness felt earned. My old fear was that betrayal would make me cynical forever. Instead, it had forced me to define my standards and protect them. That night, I slept without grinding my teeth, and when I woke, my jaw felt relaxed for the first time in years. In late March, I received a short email from Gloria Hart. She wrote that Danielle settled in Minneapolis and was doing steady work, attending therapy and rebuilding. Gloria did not ask for anything, only offered a quiet update and a wish for my well-being. Reading it did not reopen wounds. It felt like hearing that a distant storm moved on. I replied with a brief, respectful note, then closed my laptop. Later, I told Lila about the email in a few sentences. She listened without judgment and asked how it made me feel. I paused, surprised that I could answer without theatrics. Neutral, I said, then after a breath, grateful I am not carrying her life anymore. Lila nodded, as if that was a normal thing to say, because it is. We went for a walk to a corner store, bought fruit and tea, and the cashier greeted Lila by name. Life felt steady, not perfect, and that steadiness was enough. A few weeks after that, Deshaun invited me to speak at a local trade school about automotive careers. Standing in front of students, I felt the old military habit of scanning faces and exits, but I also felt a new steadiness. I talked about discipline, about learning systems, about respect for tools and for people. I avoided motivational cliches because teenagers can smell them. I told them honest things, that patience builds skill, that pride can be helpful and harmful, that mistakes cost money and trust. A student asked how I handle failure. The question landed in my chest. I did not mention Danielle by name. I said, you feel it, you learn from it, and you do not let it write your identity. My voice sounded calm, but my hands were sweaty. Afterward, a teacher thanked me for being real. I drove back to the shop with the radio off, listening to tire hum on the road, and feeling quietly proud that my pain had become useful without becoming my personality. On a warm evening in June, Lila and I hosted a small cookout in my backyard. Deshaun brought ribs, neighbors brought sides, and someone set up a speaker with soft soul music. Lila moved through the group with an easy grace, checking on everyone the way she checks on animals, attentive and calm. I noticed how naturally she fit into my life, not as a replacement for Danielle, but as her own person with her own rhythm. My speech pattern changed around her. I spoke more freely, fewer guarded pauses. Deshaun caught that and smiled like a brother watching you heal. At one point, Patrice called, and I put her on speaker so she could laugh with us. Patrice's laugh was loud and bright, and it filled the yard like sunlight. When the food ran low, my neighbor's kid asked if he could take home leftovers, and everyone joked about his appetite. In that ordinary moment, I felt the future settle around me, quiet and believable. That night, I cleaned the yard and listened to distant traffic fade. I thought about the December evening when Danielle asked why I did not want her anymore, and how my answer had been a quiet smile instead of a fight. I did not regret leaving. I did not regret keeping my dignity. I regretted the wasted days of denial, the nights I pretended not to see what was obvious because I wanted certainty before action. That is my flaw. I delay feelings until I can file them neatly. I am learning that feelings do not wait for folders. Lila came outside and wrapped a blanket around my shoulders without asking. You are quiet, she said. Just thinking, I replied. She did not demand details. She sat beside me and watched fireflies drift above the grass. The silence between us was not punishment. It was comfortable. I realized trust can be rebuilt in small, consistent acts, not grand speeches. My chest felt less guarded. I leaned back and let the night be gentle. In August, I took a short trip with Lila to a small mountain town for a weekend festival. We rode a bus part away, then rented a car, laughing at the cramped seats and the chatter of tourists. The town had a single main street with a bakery, a barbershop, and a church that rang a bell at noon. We ate peach cobbler and listened to a bluegrass band under string lights. I noticed how my mind stayed in the present, not wandering back to betrayal. When Lila asked what I wanted next year to look like, I did not flinch. Stable, I said. Honest. It's quite good. She smiled and squeezed my hand, and I felt my old fear of commitment soften. On the ride back, rain tapped the windshield in a steady rhythm. I watched the road unfold and realized I was no longer outrunning ghosts. I was simply moving forward. When we returned, I unlocked my front door and felt my house accept me the way a good habit does, without argument. I washed road dust from my hands, set my keys in the same bowl, and noticed the quiet did not feel empty anymore. Danielle's betrayal remained real, but it no longer owned my mornings or my sleep. Deshawn's shop, Patrice's calls, and Lila's presence had rebuilt my sense of trust one honest day at a time. I stepped on the back deck, watched city lights flicker beneath the mountains, and let the future arrive without fear. If this story hit you, tap the like button so more people who need this message see it. Subscribe for more real lifestyle stories, and comment done if you made it to the end, because I want to know who stayed for the full truth. The end.